Brew, Udoka might be coming in. Yeah. Steve Nash is officially out.
This is your beloved team.
This is your team.
It's so interesting because when Udoka had his issues in Boston, right, when he was let go or whatever we want to call it, suspended in Boston, I was talking with people around the league like, man, I didn't think it would happen necessarily, but I was like, if I'm the Nets, I'm going after Ime Udoka. That's not to excuse anything he did in Boston, but he's obviously was a great coach last year. Took that defense from 14th to 2nd in the league in 1 year. Obviously got him to the finals and was in Brooklyn for a year. So the players and the organization knows him. As far as Nash, I'm going to give the Nets credit for this because it's obvious that Steve Nash had to go. It's obvious, okay?
Yeah.
He had no emphasis on defense, no imagination on offense. And you mentioned Durant, Kyrie. I mean, clearly didn't have the respect of the players as far as a coach. I'm sure they respected him as a player and what he did in his career. But I didn't think, Nick, I thought they know they should fire Nash, but will they do it? Will they not do it to save face so they don't look like they're kowtowing
but they are.
to Kevin Durant?
Listen, Kevin Durant's got everything they want.
They're not kowtowing because they're 2-5.
Well,
they need to fire him, and better now than later so you can save the season.
Okay.
If it's going to be saved.
Okay, so I
think it's the best chance they have of saving the season.
So they're obviously just screwed either way.
Why?
But I want to start. There's so many things you said there that it's fascinating. You talked about all the issues Nash had. With the defense, the lack of ingenuity on offense. Well, those issues were present his first year there and his second year there. So why did they not fire him this summer? Why did they not fire him before Kevin Durant wanted him fired?
Obviously.
Like this is, or then after Kevin Durant wanted him fired. Why? So Kevin, you think it's good business that they looked at their 2 seasons Nash had been the coach? We're like, he's our guy. Then their best players like, I want him out. And they're like, no, he's our guy.
Right.
And then 6 bad games, because they won last night. 6 bad games is enough to fire him. That's smart. That's good business. That's how you run a team.
This is all fluid. They obviously like Steve Nash, the front office, and wanted to keep him. But when you see the season going south, and you see that the defense is a mess, the offense is a mess. You barely beat Indiana, which is a bad team.
Yeah.
You can't punt on the year. It wasn't going to get better under Nash, much better. So get rid of him and see what you can do going forward.
I know it was a close sweep, but wasn't that the opportune time to get rid of Steve Nash?
Yes.
I think it's bizarre that they brought him back.
They didn't.
It's not bizarre.
And now you have it 6 games in. You still have a long enough time to turn this thing around.
Of course you do.
And
you just need new players, and they're not going to
Really?
get those.
Kevin Durant's not good.
No,
Kyrie Irving can't play. Ben Simmons and Royce O'Neal, they can't play.
No. Kevin Durant is amazing, and he has been a part of the 2-5 start. Everything else you said has not contributed to win. The guy that you just listed that has most recently contributed to winning basketball is Royce O'Neal. But I don't want to have the same old Nets discussion. They just fired their coach for a reason. They are in total disarray for a reason. They are the most dysfunctional franchise that doesn't have a toxic owner in all of sports. They have fans protesting in center court yesterday. They are now firing their coach as a knee-jerk reaction, and they are bringing in the one coach in basketball that has massive baggage of his own. That the reason he's available is because he was involved in a scandal. And even with the coaching hire, we're doing the same thing, the same math of justification that they've done with the player hires. Well, on paper, it's a huge upgrade. But if there should have been evidence that none of this stuff is on paper, that the relationships and the toxicity and the baggage and the nonsense can derail what on paper looks good. But on paper, it shouldn't look good. Because the argument for the Nets this year that I heard from people that believed in them well, Kyrie's in a contract year, and Ben Simmons trying to prove himself. So for those reasons, those guys will commit on both ends of the court. Those guys will play winning basketball. But they haven't.
It's
and
7 games.
It's long enough to fire the coach, but it's not long enough to evaluate.
So what, should they trade all the players and start all over? That would be better?
I think it's their only hope.
I do too.
Okay. They're relevant. This is a business too. If they trade all their players and then they get a bunch of draft picks.
in the NBA in season tickets.
If they trade all their players and get a bunch of draft picks, we're not talking about them. No other shows are talking about them. You don't have
the
star
Knicks are already
players.
the not good relevant team in New York. That lane is already taken.
I guess I don't know. Maybe, listen, I'm not a businessman, but is it better to be talked about purely for awful stuff? Or to not be talked about.
If you're not winning, that's what you're going to be talked about. But they're doing this so they can start winning. Yeah, now, it might not work.
Of course it's not.
Can I ask you, let's suppose Ime is hired, which is a bizarre decision, as you've said, just because the reporting around this has been less than dogged. Yeah. Let's just say. The Walter Cronkite of this situation is Matt Barnes driving in his car saying, wow, I heard some stuff, and that's what we've got to go on.
Matt went far.
But let's just talk like he's hired. You mentioned he turned the Celtics defense around.
Yes.
But they also have Marcus Smart and Robert Williams, and Grant Williams played great, and Tatum and Jalen bought in. Do you think the personnel of the Nets are willing to buy in with that personnel the Celtics had seemed defensive oriented?
Right. Well,
this team seems offensive oriented.
I don't think they can be as good of a defensive team as Boston was last year. But Royce O'Neal can defend. Ben Simmons, we know, can defend. Kevin Durant can defend. If they're a mediocre defensive team, which they can definitely be a mediocre defensive team.
Like the Lakers are kind of doing.
And get stops when you need to.
You think
their offense can be good enough? Yeah. Look. Defense, it takes a coach emphasizing it. You have to have a coach. I'm sure Nash talked about it. I'm sure they went over it here and there, but he didn't emphasize it. If the coach emphasizes defense and you've got the strength and the athleticism to do it, which they do, then they can be a pretty good, decent defensive team.
I'm in a weird spot because I've argued that Nash – They should have given Nash the treatment that the Broncos think about giving Nat Hackett. It was clear he was not qualified to be an NBA head coach immediately, and he never got better. His playoff adjustments were play Durant more minutes. That's the only playoff adjustment he had. They don't run an offense, and they're terrible at defense. So I do understand firing him. I think the timing of it is odd because they could have done it over the summer.
Agreed, but they didn't.
But that's
so
fine.
Why not do it now?
That's fine. But the question I want to ask you is this. The Nets have been a train wreck. Yeah. Forget, even remove the Kyrie drama, to put it lightly. Are you saying that Nash was responsible for 50% of it, 60%? I'd say he's responsible for 10% of it. You think he's responsible for a lot of it? He's
not responsible for Kyrie's shenanigans. All right, like you said, to put it lightly. He's not responsible for Ben Simmons' mental issues, but he's responsible for the offense, which wasn't imaginative. When he couldn't get Kevin Durant an open shot in the playoffs last year, okay? He's responsible for the lack of focus on defense. That's what he's responsible for. You bring in a new coach who's going to try to correct those things.
He mentioned Kevin Durant. Can we stay here just for maybe an extra minute? There is an element here. The overarching story is Kevin Durant now has gotten damn near everything he asked for. They kept Kyrie. He asked for them to fire the coach. They have fired.
He wanted to be traded.
No, I know. No. Of course. But with the Nets, as far as what the Nets, if it was a situation of his making, one of the prerequisites to him rescinding the trade demand was fire the coach. Now, the other one was fire the GM as well, but he said trade me, and then when they were trying to keep him, they were like, well, fire the coach, keep Kyrie, fire the GM. They've done two of the three. And Durant is playing great basketball as he always does. There is an element of this, Wilds, that and I've defended Durant the player repeatedly, but he has made his own bedfellows here, most notably with Kyrie. If this thing goes to hell like it's looking like, if they become the most disappointing alleged super team in NBA history, which up to this point they have been, that he's got to wear that.
Does he? Because here's the other option. Why did Kevin Durant go to Golden State? There was a certain amount of personal growth he talked about, but also professional growth, and there was a joy of basketball. This is the way basketball is supposed to be played, and I like it here. If this situation just becomes just straight up not fun to be at, I think that trade demand pops back up.
Oh, I think
don't
that's
care
on the board.
Who's the coach. You don't think? I think that's
trade demand come back.
It doesn't matter. He's under contract for 4 years.
What if there's
he had a trade demand this summer.
Right, but that's when they thought they could compete for a title.
I'm not worried about what Kevin Durant's thinking right now. If I'm the Nets, I'm trying to get it right basketball-wise so I can keep Kevin Durant.
Of course, but I think what Wiles
the last thing on my mind is a trade demand coming from Kevin Durant.
Is there a point where this Nets season can go so poorly that if you were the Nets, you would say, well, we should trade him? You know what I mean? If we're 5-14, and it's like, okay, nothing's fixing this, we might. So in that regard, that's where I still think it could come back up, because you were proven right that they could hold their water and just say 4 years. But that was when they thought it was in their best interest to have him. You know what I mean? To have Kevin Durant on the team that they thought they could win right now. If Ben Simmons is still, there in name only. And Kyrie, even if he somehow finds a way to skirt this controversy fully, he's going to step into another thing. There's no way anyone can believe this will be the last one with Kyrie. And if the teams, the roster has the issues that I think it does, it might be in their best interest. I want to say one last thing about Udoka. Udoka's Haralabos Vulgaris, you guys know I have mass respect for him as an NBA guy, used to help run the Mavericks, sharp NBA mind. He made a point on Twitter that I think is worth mentioning. He said, I'm very interested in watching Udoka coach his staff that doesn't have Mazzulla and Hardy. So Hardy is right now the head coach of the Jazz. Right. They're probably the biggest surprise in the league in a positive way. Mazzulla's doing a hell of a job with a great team, obviously, in Boston. That is not taking anything away from Ime Udoka, but it is, I think, an interesting question. He's walking into what I think is the hardest coaching job in the country with his own baggage and the Kyrie baggage and all of it, and to see what that's going to look like for him.
All right, more on this story.